Listen closely, my friends. Your emotions are not your enemy, but right now they are running your life. And you did not choose that. You did not wake up one day and decide, I am going to let my anger make my decisions. I am going to let my anxiety write my responses. I am going to let my fear choose my direction. It just happened. Slowly, without announcement, one reaction at a time. One moment of saying something you immediately regretted. One decision made from the middle of a feeling that looked completely different in the morning light. One relationship slowly worn down, not by big dramatic moments, but by the accumulation of small emotional reactions that were never examined, never questioned, never chosen, just happened. And here is what I want you to understand before anything else. The problem is not that you have emotions. The problem is that nobody ever taught you what to do with them. Nobody sat you down and said, here is how the emotional system actually works. Here is the difference between feeling something and being commanded by it. Here is how to be fully human, fully feeling, fully alive, and at the same time fully in control of what you do with what you feel. That education is 2,000 years overdue. And today the Stoics are going to share it with you. Before we dive into these habits, I need to say something that changes the entire frame of this conversation. The Stoic goal is not to become emotionless. That is the biggest misunderstanding about Stoic philosophy that exists. Marcus Aurelius felt grief. Seneca felt fear. Epictetus felt frustration. They were not stone. They were human beings with the full range of human experience, living through things that would break most people, and they felt all of it. What they built through daily practice was not the absence of emotion. It was the gap, the space between the feeling and the action, the pause where the rational mind gets to say, I see what I am feeling. I understand what it is telling me, and I choose what I do with it. That gap, that small deliberate space, is where all the power lives. And these 10 habits practiced every single day are how you build it. Habit 1. Name the emotion before it names you. Every morning before the day begins, before the phone, before the noise, spend 2 minutes with one question. What am I feeling right now? Not how am I, but what am I feeling? And be specific. Not just bad or stressed, anxious about the meeting, irritable because of the conversation yesterday, sad about something I have not fully acknowledged, excited in a way that is making me scattered. The specificity matters, because the moment you name an emotion precisely, something happens in the brain. The amygdala, the part responsible for the emotional alarm system, loses some of its power. The naming activates the prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, the part that can observe rather than just react, and observation is the beginning of control. Epictetus wrote, first say to yourself what you would be. Before the day can tell you what you are, tell yourself. Name the emotional weather you woke up in, not to fix it, not to judge it, just to see it clearly, because you cannot navigate weather you cannot see. And the weather you name is weather you can work with. Habit 2. Pause before every significant response. Not forever. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, long enough for the reactive brain to step back and the rational brain to step forward. This is the habit that changes more relationships, more conversations, more outcomes than any other single practice. Because most emotional damage, most of the things we spend weeks wishing we could take back, happened in the gap between the trigger and the response. In that gap, which was not a gap at all, which was an instant reaction operating on pure impulse, the emotion was driving, not you. Marcus Aurelius called this the ruling faculty, the part of the mind that observes what is happening and chooses what to do with it. And it cannot operate in zero time. It needs the pause, 3 seconds, every time something lands that creates an emotional response. Before you speak, before you act, before you send the message, pause. 3 seconds. Ask, is this response mine or is this the emotion responding? And if the emotion is driving, let it sit for a moment. You can always respond later. You cannot unsay what you said in the pause you did not take. Habit 3. Journal for 10 minutes every evening. This is the habit Marcus Aurelius practiced his entire life. Not for us, for himself. in private. Every evening he went back through the day, not to celebrate, not to punish, to examine. Where did I lose control today? Where did my emotion take over before my values could catch up? Where did I react when I intended to respond? Where did I say something that came from the wrong place? And what will I do differently tomorrow? That examination, done honestly, done without self-punishment but with genuine self-honesty, is how the emotional patterns change. Because here is what most people never realize about their emotional reactions. They are not random. They are patterns. Specific triggers, specific situations, specific people, conversations, or circumstances that reliably produce the same emotional reaction because they have never been examined. The journal is the examination. The journal is where the pattern becomes visible. And the pattern that is visible can be interrupted. It cannot be interrupted if it cannot be seen. 10 minutes. 3 questions. Where did the emotion run ahead of me today? What was underneath it? What do I choose tomorrow? That is the practice. That is how Marcus Aurelius built the most examined emotional life in recorded human history. Not through genius. Through the journal habit 4. Move your body before your mind gets busy. This is the habit most people underestimate because it does not sound philosophical. It sounds like fitness advice. But here is the reality. Your emotional state is not just a mental phenomenon. It is a physical one. The anxiety you feel is not just in your mind. It is in your body, in the shallow breathing, the tight chest, the restless legs, the nervous energy that has nowhere to go. And when that physical charge has nowhere to go, it goes into your reactions, into your words, into your decisions, into the sharpness of your tone, the shortness of your patience, the speed of your trigger. Physical movement discharges it. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Enough to shift the nervous system from activated to regulated. Enough to create the physical conditions in which emotional regulation is possible. The Stoics understood the connection between body and mind completely. They believed in the discipline of the body as training for the discipline of the mind, not separately, as one practice. Before your mind gets busy tomorrow morning, before the day begins to make demands, move. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it does not matter what. Walk, stretch. Anything that gets you out of your head and into your body. And then, from that regulated physical state, meet the day. You will be surprised how different it looks. Habit 5. Choose your inputs deliberately. This is the habit that most people never think of as emotional management. But it is, because your emotional state at any given moment is downstream of everything you have consumed. The news you watched this morning, the conversation you had, the content you scrolled through, the people you spent time with, all of it is feeding the emotional system, building the weather, creating the conditions in which your reactions happen. And most people consume completely passively. Whatever arrives gets in. Whatever the algorithm serves gets consumed. Whatever conversation presents itself gets joined, without any deliberate selection, without any question of, is this feeding the version of me I am trying to build, or is this feeding something I am trying to move away from? Seneca wrote, associate with people who are likely to improve you. That instruction extends to everything you associate with. Not just people, content, conversations, information, entertainment. Every morning before you consume anything, ask, is this likely to improve me, or is this likely to agitate me? Is this going to feed the regulated version of me, or the reactive one? You do not have to eliminate everything that is not improving you. You just have to be deliberate, to choose rather than absorb, to be the curator of your own input rather than the passive recipient of whatever arrives. That deliberateness, over time, changes the baseline emotional state you are operating from. Not dramatically, incrementally, but the increment compounds, and the compounded, deliberate input builds a fundamentally different emotional baseline than the passive absorbed input. Habit 6. Practice the view from above. This is the Stoic technique that sounds abstract until you use it, and then it becomes one of the most practically powerful tools you have. when you are in the middle of an emotional reaction, when something has triggered you, when the feeling is strong and the impulse is to react, do this. Zoom out. In your mind, see yourself from above, not from your own perspective inside the feeling, from outside it, from a distance, and ask, what does this situation actually look like from here? Not from the center of the emotion, from the outside. How significant is this really in the context of the day, the week, the year, the life? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How many Alexanders have there been, and how many Caesars? How many of the things that feel enormous right now will matter in a week? In a month?
In a year?
Almost none." And the view from above, the zooming out, is how you access that perspective in the moment when the emotion is telling you that everything depends on this. It almost never does. And the moment you can see that, even slightly, even imperfectly, the emotional charge reduces. Not because the situation changed, because the perspective changed. And perspective is one of the things that is always within your control. Habit 7. Do the difficult thing first. Every day, there is something you do not want to do. The conversation you have been putting off. The decision you have been deferring. The task that sits at the back of your mind, taking up emotional space, creating a low-level anxiety that colors everything else because it is undone. And the emotional cost of carrying that undone thing is enormous. Not because the thing itself is that hard, because the carrying of it, the daily renewal of the decision not to do it yet, depletes the emotional resources you need for everything else. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, not because they enjoyed it, because they understood that the mind that regularly chooses the hard thing builds a relationship with discomfort that the mind which always chooses the easy thing never has. And the mind with a healthy relationship with discomfort is a mind that is not constantly being run by the avoidance of it, which means it is not constantly being run by fear, which means it is not constantly reacting from a place of trying to protect itself, which is where most emotional dysregulation actually comes from. Do the difficult thing first, every day, before the day has taken the energy you need to do it. Not because it is easy, because doing it, despite it not being easy, is how you prove to yourself every single day that you are not run by what is comfortable, that the emotion of avoidance does not get to drive. You do. Habit 8. Eat and sleep like your emotional regulation depends on it, because it does. This is not a wellness tip. This is neuroscience. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and considered response rather than reactive impulse, is the first part of the brain to be degraded by poor sleep. Not the amygdala. The amygdala, the threat detection and emotional alarm system, keeps firing regardless. So what happens when you are sleep-deprived or running on poor nutrition is not that you feel less. It is that the regulatory system, the part that can observe the feeling and choose the response, gets weaker. And the reactive system gets relatively stronger, which means the emotional reactions come faster, hit harder, and the pause you have been building gets shorter. This is not weakness. This is biology. And the Stoics, who believed in the discipline of the body as training for the discipline of the mind, would tell you that you cannot build a strong mind in a body you are not taking care of. The habits of emotional regulation, all of them, depend on a nervous system that has the resources to implement them. Sleep is not a luxury. It is the foundation. Protect it. Habit 9. Practice gratitude, but make it specific. Here is why generic gratitude does not work. I am grateful for my health. I am grateful for my family. I am grateful for the roof over my head. These are true, but they are so familiar, so repeated, so automatic that the brain stops processing them. They become a ritual without impact. And the impact is the point. The Stoics practiced something different. They practiced negative visualization, the deliberate contemplation of what it would be like to not have the thing, to lose the person, to face the circumstance without the resource. Not to create fear, to create genuine appreciation, the kind that shifts the emotional state rather than just naming it. Tonight, before you sleep, Think of one specific thing, one person, one moment from today, and genuinely imagine not having it, not dramatically, not anxiously, clearly. Hold that absence for a moment, and then return to the presence of it. And notice what happens to how you feel about it. That is not generic gratitude. That is the Stoic practice of receiving what you already have as the gift it actually is. And that specific lived gratitude changes the emotional baseline more powerfully than any amount of gratitude journaling that stays in the abstract. Habit 10. End each day with one honest question. Not 10. Not a journaling exercise. One question, and the question is this: did I act today from my values or from my emotions? Not was I perfect. Not did I feel the right things. Did I act from my values? Because here is the truth about emotional control that the Stoics understood completely. The goal is never to stop feeling. The goal is to stop letting the feeling make the decision. The goal is to feel everything and still act from your values. To feel the anger and still choose the measured response. To feel the fear and still take the action the fear is trying to prevent. To feel the grief and still show up for the next thing. To feel the frustration and still speak with the precision and the care that the relationship deserves. That is emotional mastery. Not the absence of feeling, the presence of values stronger than the feeling. And the only way to build values that are stronger than feelings is to return to them every day. To ask, did I act from them today, honestly? Without self-punishment when the answer is no, because the answer will sometimes be no. And that is not failure. That is information. Information about where the work is, where the next day's practice should focus, where the gap between the feeling and the action still needs to be built. One honest question. Every night. That is the habit that makes all the others compound. That is the practice that transforms the 10 habits from a list into a life. So here is what these 10 habits are actually building. Not a person without emotions, a person with a gap, a person who feels everything and still chooses, who wakes up and names the weather, who pauses before every significant response, who examines the day honestly every evening, who moves before the mind gets busy, who chooses what enters, who zooms out when everything feels enormous, who does the difficult thing first, who protects the neurological foundation, who practices genuine specific gratitude, and who ends every day with the one honest question. That person built through these 10 daily habits is not a Stoic philosopher sitting in ancient Rome. That person is you, in your life, in your relationships, in your workplace, in the conversations that matter, in the moments that test you, in the reactions that define you. Not in theory, in practice. Every day, if this found you at exactly the right moment, share it with one person who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for Stoic wisdom.